boyfriend and girlfriend, husband, how does that show up?
Yeah.
And what can we do to shift it?
That's a really good question, and I think it's a popular question as well. I think trauma really has its own lens. Trauma has its own lens, which means things can look really distorted, and how we see ourselves, we just assume that is the way everybody else is seeing us, right, or experiencing us. So if I'm insecure or if I'm challenged in any way, it must mean that person must think that I'm insecure, right? Or they must think I'm a certain way, and then we start to make assumptions based on our trauma. So our trauma basically becomes the reference. Like when you're looking for something in the dictionary, trauma is our reference for everything. That becomes the baseline. So, okay, what am I going to wear could be based off my trauma in this relationship. How this person is experiencing me, my friend, whatever, it's gone back to the trauma, right? And I think sometimes when you are in really authentic spaces that reflect you back to you. So if you've got a really good friend and they're like, oh, do you know what? Hold on, Susan. You were saying, and I experienced you but that isn't true. If you've got friends that will really kind of challenge your thought process or your experiences and give you the minute to really kind of explore, I didn't realize, because that's the thing, you're not always going to be aware of how you're showing up because the trauma is just a part of you. So yeah.
That's so good. I love that you said that. And something that I learned from yourself was about we really experience ourselves through relationships. And so trauma can interrupt the beauty of relationships, but also it's the very place that we can experience healing as well. If we have the right mind frame, not even mind frame, I guess the right attitude towards it. I think that's the right language for it. And so I love that you said that in terms of if you have a healthy setting where someone can be like, it's X and it's Y, but I think it does. So how do you, just on the back of that really quickly, how do you remain in that space with someone? Because there's been moments in the past where my friend will be like, well, I just felt like you were really dismissive or you were blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, that's on you, boo. This is who. How do you now not be so defensive when a relationship is trying to sharpen you? And I guess even deeper, how do you differentiate between someone diminishing who you are and someone actually trying to build you up?
I think something around acceptance. So when you're kind of doing that self-discovery and maybe you're going to therapy, you start to have a few authentic friends who are mirroring you, okay, and you're able to receive from them. Or therapy could be a good place to start. My friend said, so you just take what your friend said, okay, thanks for letting me know, I really appreciate that. That might not be the right person to unpick it with or unpack it with. I'll take that to my therapist, and you can go back to your therapist and be like, my friend said, this is how they experience, but that's not, I didn't think that's really me, and you can then explore whether or not you're being defensive or this is actually a true reflection of who you are. Because as you said, I normally say that you know yourself through relationships, isn't it? What was the second part of that question? Sorry.
And how do you tell the difference between someone diminishing you and someone actually trying to help you as a friend?
Yeah, I think language and spirit is important. So pay attention to the language that your friend or this particular person is using, okay? Because there's a way in which you can give someone constructive criticism. We like to say the sandwich effect. So they're very much aware of the positive as well as the areas for improvement. I think if someone is only aware of what you need to improve, then that's a reflection of how they see you in their lens, right? Because we've got good going on, okay? There's some growth and there's some work to be done. So check their language, but then also check how you feel within your spirit when you're around this person or when you've left this person. Do you feel drained? Do you feel diminished? Do you feel belittled? Do you feel devalued, right? Because that is also a great indicator of the environment that person has set for you. So those two things I think is important.
That's so good. I really, really love that, because sometimes it's hard to see the difference between the two. And also when you're used to a particular environment, say you grew up in an environment where it was quite abusive, or it was normal to kind of be like, call you a name, like as a nickname. That was the name they called you growing up. And then it's like normalized in your relationships. So it's hard to kind of differentiate. But I love how you said, how do you, like, what does that do? What is the impact of that? And also, what is the language?
And sometimes we actually take on the language of that person. You know, as Genevieve said, like if someone's calling you an idiot or you're stupid or something, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm so stupid, like I'm an idiot. Whose voice is that? Who told you that? Where did that come from? Because that wasn't me, right? So check your thoughts, check your own language. You might just be internalizing what you've picked up externally.
Wow.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah.
I feel like it's very important for you to feel comfortable enough to explore what someone has said to you. If you don't understand it, you should feel able to ask them, oh, why did you say that? Or what did you mean by that? You don't need to be left asking questions and then there's no one to answer, because then it spirals into something else as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that really is good as well in terms of when you're even in a church setting as well, because I feel like the culture is I've said, so you do. And sometimes it's okay, like sometimes to be like, oh, ask me, what does that mean? Or like sometimes I like to ask the question, how do you feel about that? Because I want to give back the power, you know, that it's not just what has been said. Also, I want to give you room to explore. And so it's just opportunity in those moments as well. I love that. Genevieve, I wanted to ask you, how does accountability look like when renewing the mind? So accountability with your friends. So you're going through this process where you're trying to transform the way you think. Where would people sit in that journey?
That's a hard question, because I feel like it looks different for everyone. I think it's very personal, but the key thing to understand is it's not black and white. Just because you say you want to start the change, it doesn't mean you're going to change by tomorrow. And I see more problems with that actually, because sometimes when you become accountable, it could go into a zone where you constantly feel like someone's wagging a finger. Oh, you said you're going to do this, but you're not doing that. So it can become quite critical, because we need to give ourselves grace and we're going to fall off sometimes. So accountability to me looks like telling someone that you trust that, you know what, this is what I'm working on. These are the rules. This is what I'm comfortable with you asking. This is what I'm not comfortable with you asking. And I would rather you encourage me than criticize me if I'm going wrong. I think that's the best way. Language.
Exactly. I love that. I always say accountability, I've taken on a new language around it. And accountability is more about, really the definition is one showing proof of their responsibility. So I'm coming to ask you, what is the proof of what you said you were responsible for? And I think there is a way that you can go about that. Hey, like we had a conversation the other day. If you are a friend of someone who's like, hold me accountable to this. Hey, how you doing? How is that going? How does that make you feel that you've not done that? Or how does it make you feel that you have done it? You know, why is it not? And sometimes you may need that sisterly, like, come on, it's girl, you've been in this thing for a while now. Like, but at the same time, it's language, isn't it? It's how you feel.
You should also do the opposite as well. When you see that person doing the thing that they said that they were going to do, don't wait for the check-in to be like,
so
oh,
good.
that's amazing. Once you see it, you're like, oh, I see you. I hear you. Right? And that can also encourage that person to continue in that behavior.
I love that. I love that. It makes me think about, like, you know, when I've been looking really nice after giving birth, my friends are like, okay, small waist. And you're just like, you know, because it makes you feel good. They didn't have to say that, but they say it just to encourage, and it gives you the motivation. So language again. Okay, cool. So we've got some questions here. A key question here was, I find processing my emotions quite overwhelming at times. A lot of the times I don't know where to start. Where does this said person start?
Right there. Just sit with it. I think it's very important to tolerate distressing emotions. It's almost like we run away as soon as we feel uncomfortable, but that's not healthy. Sit with the emotion. If you feel rejected, sit with it, process it. Start to feel comfortable with feeling like you failed, sit with it. And when you sit with it and you get comfortable, the next step is resolving this. What are some of the, what meaning have I given to this? So I feel very uncomfortable, I feel anxious. So that means that I'm maybe going to avoid? No. Start to change the meaning. Okay, I feel anxious, so I'm going to face it. So start to change the meaning, face these emotions, and anxiety won't be, it will just be anxiety. Oh, it's come, it's going to go. You know, just allow emotions to come and go. It's like a wave. Yeah.
That's so good. That's really good. And I just wanted to add, with some of these emotions, it's really important to be non-judgmental. I think it's like we're so programmed to, I need to act. I need to do something about this. Oh, I'm feeling this. Oh, I've got to do something about it. You don't need to judge the emotion. You don't need to do something with it. As Genevieve said, just sit with it. And I'm somebody who says if you sit with it long enough, emotions will begin to inform you of what you should be doing. But when you're not still enough, you're not hearing the information that you should be from the emotion. That's what they're there for. They're not to drive you to the behavior, right? They're to inform you of what's happening on the inside of you.
I love that. There's something that you've both said actually at different points. It's not a spirit, but this is what I call it, a spirit of running away. And I think we've all done it, like escaping. So the moment like a feeling comes, an emotion comes that we are not comfortable with or that we do not like, it's like, okay, let me go out. Do you know what I mean? Let me catch flights and be on a yacht. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we're trying so hard to not sit with it, but it's doing more damage than it is doing good. Those things are nice, but like, it's the real thing. So how do you navigate that mechanism where you run instead of dealing with it, like instead of sitting with it? How do we put it into practice?
I think self-awareness. You've got to be really self-aware to catch yourself when you're doing it, recognizing your own patterns of behaving, because at the end of the day, it's avoidance. What you're doing is avoiding this particular thing. And if we go through the whole roots of avoidance, we can look at, okay, is this because of an attachment style that we have? Is it because of, I don't know, underlying mental health issues? Is it a fear or flight behavior? So why am I running away? And I normally say that we are avoiding the experience of a thing instead of the actual thing. What does this experience remind you of? What does it feel like? Oh, when I feel like this, it means this. And that's what you then need to check, the meaning of what that emotion is for you.
I love that.
Like to add actually, when you start to notice the link between emotions and behavior, you almost become your own therapist. So for example, whenever you feel sad, do you notice that you're always eating? That's a behavior. So a thing that you can start to ask yourself is, what are the consequences or the unintended consequences to what I'm doing now? If I'm always eating because I feel sad, the unintended consequence is that I'm going to gain a lot of weight and then I won't be happy and then I'll feel more sad. If whenever I feel anxious, I book a flight and I go away, the unintended consequence is that I might end up broke. So what are the unintended consequences to the things that make me feel good now for the future?
Yeah,
That's
really good.
That's, ooh, girl, you went there, yeah. I took that in. No, it's really, really true. Unintended consequences. Yeah. So the question here says, what do you do when you can't currently escape the environment which is causing the trauma? Living with person causing the trauma.
This is how it is. In a therapy session, it gets like this sometimes. You just need to process as well.
And think about it.
There's pros and cons to everything. And I feel like, did they say can't?
Yeah, can't, yeah.
That in itself is the trap.
Mm.
Yeah, can't. Keep telling yourself, I can't. You can't. Yeah. So with everything in life, you need to wonder, well, for me anyway, I'm never stuck. Yeah, I'm free.
Wow.
Yeah. So if I need to make a decision, I look at the pros and the cons and I do it anyway. I might not feel comfortable, but I'm doing it. Simple. And I'll face it, but I've got to do it. Yeah.
That's really good.
So good.
As you said, courage. It does take courage to kind of shift. I think also taking it down to steps, because sometimes we're just looking at the big picture. As you said, I can't get out of here. Okay, I can't probably move right now,
Yeah.
but what can I do in the environment that I'm in? Can I create a safe environment, as I was talking earlier, in my bedroom? Is there a safe space within that house? Is it an essence of timing? And is it an essence of boundaries? What can I do until I am able to do the very thing that I want to do? You know, it's not impossible. However, I think when you are in a place of desperation, you do not see options. When you are desperate, you only see one thing and you think then that's it, right? But when you're no longer desperate, when you are actually educating yourself, becoming a lot more aware of yourself, you begin to see the options that are actually available to you. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. I want revenge so bad. I still believe people should pay for hurting me bad. At the same time, I know vengeance is the Lord. So how do you come out of that mindset?
You said it. Vengeance is the Lord's. You would be very surprised, because if we are believing that scripture is the truth, we have to believe all of it. Okay? And when God says that vengeance is his, it really is. You know, there's so many scriptures where it says, when your way suits the Lord, your enemies will become your footstool. You'll be very surprised. So don't set yourself up for the trap, which is what the enemy wants you to do, to discount yourself from the blessings and the favor of God, from the enemy becoming your footstool. You know, so stand on the scriptures.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Another thing that comes to me is validate yourself. I'm sorry, whoever it is. I'm sorry that you went through what you went through. And I think you should be able to also comfort yourself and say, I shouldn't have gone through that, I'm sorry. Yeah. The second step is to understand that by you wanting revenge, that's quite time consuming. Your life is focused on that incident. And if your life is so focused on the trauma, you've turned your back to the possibilities, which could be a better life. So at some point, you need to turn around and face hope. Yeah. And once again, that's an action. You've got to turn around. Because there's nothing you can do, no level of revenge that will make you feel better. You might do something, but then next time you'll be like, I should have broken their head and their neck. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's never going to be enough. So at some point, it's about letting go and facing your future, rebuilding your life. Yeah.
I love that. That's so good. Next question says, I can see my trauma showing up in my relationship. I know it sometimes affects my partner having to deal with negative thinking patterns. For example, this limitation makes the person feel they can't move forward. They've already worked hard to apply what they've learned to themselves. I think that's the part 2, but we'll go with the part 1 because I'm not sure. But yeah, hold on. Sorry, guys. I can see my trauma showing up in my relationship. I know it sometimes affects my partner having to deal with negative thinking patterns. How do you deal with that?
Do you want to go first?
I was just acknowledging the time, sorry.
Oh, okay.
No, sorry.
I think there should be no pressure. There should be no pressure on the relationship to be a therapeutic space.
Wow.
You're not qualified, they're not qualified. And that is the reality. I think sometimes we go into relationships with unrealistic expectations that this person now needs to be my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, my best friend. my therapist and my banker and all the other things that come into it. But the reality is we are both coming in with our flaws, with our traumas, with things that need unpacking. But it's about creating a space that is safe enough for us to unpack. You know, so I feel having open conversations, and if you're not in therapy, get into therapy, you know, because then you won't be looking to your partner to meet the need, right, of, I don't know, tending to your wounds. It isn't fair on them, and it isn't fair on you.
Yeah.
That's so good.
You need to feel safe, and your partner might not be the one to create that safe space. So I guess it's about going back to basics. How do I keep myself safe? And once you discover that, if you feel comfortable, share that with your partner. If this comes up, this is what I would like us to do. That's something that you can work through together. And another thing to acknowledge is that healing is not a line that just goes like that. It literally looks like that sometimes. So you might feel like, oh, okay, I'm on the right path. And then another day you might feel like you're crumbling. But the most important thing is to create a safe space where you feel stable. Yeah.
And I was just going to add, like, it doesn't probably take away from the fact that your partner's a great person. I always do this, but they probably are a great person. They just may not have the tools to help to assist you on that journey of healing, basically. I've dealt with guilt my whole life due to childhood trauma. I'm in therapy, but what are some daily tips to overcome the need to make up for past mistakes?
That's a loaded question. Guilt and shame are really big emotions, and a common behavior that is exhibited in both is hiding. Okay, when you start to feel a lot of guilt about something or even shame, you hide. And I feel like if you can catch your hiding places, the places that you hide, and start to expose them, I think that's probably a beginning of the journey of really uncovering that guilt. Yeah.
I love that.
Also change your story.
Yeah.
The fact that you can acknowledge all of this is very powerful. Like you said, guilt and shame, they're very strong emotions and they control you. But once you acknowledge it, rewrite your story. So is it that you write to your younger self and make changes as the adult person? Start to parent the younger self. I know that maybe this was the trauma and that was that and you couldn't control that, but now I am in a better place. I'm 20, and I'm, you know, I'm studying, and although that was the past, this is me now. Start to rewrite your story, and over time you'll have to catch on.
I love that. I love that. Last two questions. Do you have any tips or advice on not defaulting into silence when faced with conflict or disagreement? And can you shed some light where this can come from? Yeah, this is a really good question.
I think defaulting into silence is sometimes because we don't know the power of our voice. I think if you've grown up in a house where you are to be seen and never heard, you might not even know what you sound like. So the easiest thing for me to do is to just not say anything, because it will avoid, I don't know, whatever it is that you're trying to avoid, the experience of this particular thing. So I always say practice. Practice speaking up for yourself. It might not be in the house, or it might not be in this particular setting, but it might be at school. It might be at work. It might be with your friends. It might just be something as simple as, I give clients out of session activities as simple as ask for something that's not on the menu. You're going to get a no, right? But you begin to get comfortable with the no, or the confrontation, or the because conflict is not negative. We have a negative connotation of conflict. It's literally just about bringing something to the forefront. It can actually be really healthy. So put yourself in positions to train that voice until it's strong enough to be used in the place that you actually want to use it.
And to add on to that, I think sometimes when we avoid confrontation or we become silent, it's a trauma response. It's the freeze response. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And literally, it becomes so normal. So I think the first thing is to notice when you freeze. Give yourself time, soothe yourself. But then also understand it's a behavior. So the next time this happens, what am I going to do? Even if I just say no, that's something. And then you're going to build your voice over time as well. So create a plan. The next time I have to deal with confrontation, I'm going to say X, Y, and Z. And then you build up from there. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I think even in experience in terms of silence as well, for myself, I grew up in a household where if you did something wrong or someone wasn't happy, like they would literally be silent with the silent treatment, essentially, right? And so silent treatment was kind of like a normal thing. Like you would not talk to people in the house for like sometimes weeks, months. And so I noticed it in my own, like after I got married, that when I'm not happy with something, I go into that silent treatment. And it wasn't until I went through therapy that I realized, actually, no, this has been a way of life. Like, it actually happens in your family. And so, like you said, like bringing up, putting things forward that you wouldn't usually do to kind of even, it's uncomfortable to have a voice when you haven't been trained to have a voice. Like it means like, no, we don't talk about this. We close the door, and when we're all comfortable, we'll all come together for Christmas. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't make any sense. Like there's so much beef here. I don't get it. but it empowers you as well. And the relationships that I have become better because of that, even if they do that, if that makes sense. So I love what you said, the pointers that you said, because it can make a difference in the way you engage. Last question, what to do when you're trying to have hope, but it feels too painful and scary? You feel you've been broken too many times.
Sorry, I'm processing.
Yeah, hope is really big.
Let me share a personal story. To have hope is a choice. I went through some real challenges a couple of years ago, and I was alone. The only thing I had, and I'll kid you not, was literally my Bible. I couldn't turn anywhere. As a therapist, who am I going to talk to? I should know the answers, right? I couldn't share my story because of confidentiality. Like the therapist world, like we all know each other, sadly. There was one day I went to the chat, I called a helpline, and then the woman on the helpline, instead of praying with me, she was like, Lord have mercy, how can you? And I'm there thinking, I'm literally crying, like, you should be helping me right now. Couldn't go to the prayer line, couldn't talk to my friends because I was so ashamed. I was literally isolated. The only thing I had was the moment where I walked into my room and I got down on my knees and I was like, do you know what, Lord, help me. And there was a scripture that came to mind, that came to me, and it says, God is with her, she will not fail. Yeah. I held on to that word and I chose to have hope. It was a choice. I had nothing. I had literally nothing. I couldn't see the future. I didn't have what I have now. And I said, you know what, Lord, like, I'm holding. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm choosing. And I think I know the enemy likes to take away your hope, because when you don't have hope, that's when you start doing the worst things. I was going down the wrong road, but it's hope that kept me. So I would encourage whoever it is that even if you can't see hope, you don't always see hope. That's why hope is difficult. Just hold on to it. Move a little by little, you'll start to see some kind of light, and before you know it, God's word will manifest. So just hold on.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. And just to kind of like close, like, so powerful to share. Thank you so much, Genevieve, because I just feel like everyone has probably been in that situation where like hope feels so far, you know, but I love what you said, like, hold on to it day by day. Like, it's the small, I say sometimes to people that day by day see it as a brick, lay the brick, and then before you know it, you're in a whole house. you know, and sometimes like I know we want the whole house. And whatever that house represents, it could be hope, it could be healing, it could be like whatever it may be, but brick by brick, lay brick by brick, and before you know it, whilst you're consumed in laying the brick day by day, you're in a whole house. But in terms of a lot of this lays on the foundation of self-awareness. And so I wanted to kind of ask, like, what are practical ways to be self-aware? We know there's meditation, journaling. What are other ways that you can become more self-aware or get into the practice of that?
I think there's a lot of kind of therapist aids that are readily available, whether it's kind of tracking cycles and behaviors and just making notes and keeping diaries of, you know, the relationships between your thoughts and your behaviors to actually see, because when you write it down, you're most likely to pay more attention to it. You know, I remember even just trying to lose weight and my doctor's like, you need to keep a food diary, and I'm just like, keep a food diary? Well, then you keep a food diary, you're like, oh, so this is how many calories I'm actually eating a day. I thought I was being really good. So again, writing things down doesn't necessarily have to be emotive, right? It's around just tracking your behaviors and your thoughts and your patterns. And then again, I'm always big on movement. I'm always saying, move your body, you know, in any way, shape or form. You can run, you can lift, you can do any kind of exercises, you can dance, you can stretch, right? Movement is important because as you move, it also supports the way you process information. So those two things, I think.
And ask yourself questions. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? What's the meaning behind this? Okay, I don't know the meaning, but where are we going with this thought? Ask yourself questions. Become your own therapist.
I love that. Sometimes I find myself randomly, like, I'll be thinking something and I know I'm ruminating so much that I'll pause in Tesco and I'll be like, I need to journal this down. And so I get my notes out and I just start writing whatever it is. And then I kind of bookmark it and then come back to it like in the evening and kind of go through it and I ask myself the questions as well. And I think it's something my therapist taught me, like, don't just feel an emotion, challenge the emotion. Okay, you felt embarrassed. Why did that statement bring you to that feeling? And we often stay on the I feel this way but not the deeper level, and I think that's really, really
also
important.
When you write things down, it acts like a brain dump.
Yeah.
You know, I watch on social media, people are always doing a February dump or whatever month dump it is, and then they're all just dumping all the things that they've done, right, throughout the month. But the reality is probably if they didn't do that, they would miss monumental moments in their lives where they were actually enjoying, where they were actually truly happy or engaging in activities that they wouldn't normally. So sometimes we even miss all the great things that we are doing because sometimes we only concentrate on documenting the negative. So do both.
That's so good. That's so good. And you know, I love what you said, Stacy. And I think it's a good way to close, but like in terms of moving your body. And I was reading in a book, I believe I shared it with both of you, I can't remember, but it's a book by Ruth. We're going to send book recommendations out, but it's Experiencing God in Solitude and Silence. And she was saying that, you know, solitude and silence looks like going for a walk or exercising. And she said that see endorphins as God's gift to us to experience Him. And I was like, I was floored, okay? I read that and I put the book down because I was like, we don't see it like that. When we exercise, we get endorphins, but that's actually God gifting our body and allowing it to bring clarity. And so, like, you don't have to be the healthiest person. It could be walks, could be gym, whatever it may be, but moving your body is actually a gift to you to bring clarity. And some of your best ideas happen through that as well. It happens for me as well. I'm like, I'll be exercising, I've got my phone, then I'm like, while I'm doing the burpee, trying to, you know, but it's helpful. So just a thought on that. But thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you.
And Genevieve, such an amazing session. If you enjoyed it, say hey. Hey. I don't know, I need more energy. Say hey. Hey. I love that. I love that. I love that. I think we can all take away key tools from today. And we do have the program we did last year with Stacy and Nikita last year, which is accessible online, which is our full week program. So we go a little bit more deeper about God and therapy, etc. So that is accessible. We'll send the link out for that. And also we will send out book recommendations as well. We'll collate them. So hopefully by Tuesday, latest Wednesday, you should get that email as well. And I encourage you, like, think of ways over this weekend you're going to apply what you've taken today. Like, think of one thing, right? And how you're going to apply this weekend, or how you're going to start moving forward. And so on that note, we are going to pray. Also, if you want prayer journals, we've got prayer journals at the back filled with so much truth in it. It's at the back. You can get those at the back, and notepads as well. And yeah, let's pray. Grab the hand of the person next to you. Grab their elbow or their shoulder if you're comfortable. Whew. Right. Yeah. And let's just really just declare something over them. Just pray over that person. Pray blessings, truth, grace. Yeah, God.